Hello, everybody, and welcome to Teachers in the Dungeon. I'm Tom Gross, and joining me is Dan Ream, as always. Hello, Dan.
Good morning.
Good morning. The dungeon is thawing out.
It is. And it feels much earlier than it actually is. Unfortunately, I had a very, very late night.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Dice goblins, I guess you could say.
You
rather
were
than
playing
regular.
some games.
Yep. My Taekwondo buddies, I run a game for them. And we had a combat that started at, I think, 8:30. And we stopped at 11:30. And we're still not exactly done.
Oh, wow. Man.
So
can you give us some details on it, or just some generalities?
There's some of them that might be listening, so I may have to shield some things. But the story, the setup was we're a little bit adrift in this city.
Okay.
And so this time around, which was by design, this was sort of the end of a story arc, and the people that they did the job for took them by boat, and this just happened to be the place they dropped them off. So it's a large cosmopolitan city.
Okay.
So they did some shopping. They met some mysterious people, but they didn't really have direction yet. So this time was when they were going to get direction. So they met an old friend. They met Artaxis.
Oh, I know Artaxis.
Yes, so Artaxis made fun of them for a while, and basically it was sort of an info dump in that I wanted them to start thinking big picture. Why all these coincidences? Why do they, every time they head someplace new for a job, there's a portal to the abyss that someone is trying to open?
Okay.
And so I wanted them kind of thinking in those terms.
Got it.
And then they get told by another individual that there actually is something like that going on in the city. They need to stop it. Like her master wants them to stop it.
Okay.
So in order to do that, they had to there's a part of the town where you have to have a special bracelet if you want to go into. So they had to get the bracelets.
Yep.
So they had to go to a temple. The rumor was this temple had a cache of these bracelets, highly illegal. You're not supposed to ever have them, but they do. And this temple then uses those bracelets, puts it on its followers to infiltrate. So they just need to get the bracelets.
Got it.
So there's a little bit going on there where the temple itself is doing something illegal. So if they go in and get a little rough, it's not like people can really go report them.
Right.
It's the Temple of Webs, which is very clearly,
I see where that's going.
Yes. And so they go there in the morning, and of course it's locked during the day.
Yes.
And I expected them to case the joint, wait till evening, see if it opens, kind of talk their way in.
Okay.
And, if they have to fight, they'd already be in there.
Right.
But that's not what they decided to do.
Oh, all right.
They did case the joint. They found a back door that was locked. They didn't check for traps.
Temple of Webs, that might not be a bad idea.
So they did pick the lock very successfully first try, but didn't do anything about the glyph of warding that sprayed acid all over them.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, okay, so now we'll reset, and then a couple of them were like, let's just bust in. Let's just bust right in.
I love it.
I was like, okay, so you pounded on the front door. There was no answer. You walked around the back. You didn't sneak. You picked the lock. You triggered the alarm essentially with this glyph of warning.
Mm-hmm.
So they push the door open, and the druid goes in as a cat. So I was like, well, there's a shadowy figure at the end of the hall, and does a 19 hit you? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so now you're a person again. And so I said, so then this figure comes and stands over you and says it's not polite to try to break in. Okay. And so he scrambles out, and the door slams shut. And they think for a little bit, and they're like, let's do it again.
No. Yes. I love it.
So I was like, seriously? So they did, but that gave the people inside the temple all the time they needed to set up
They're ready with some webs.
So it became just a slog. I felt bad. I should have, as a DM, I should have saw this coming and been more creative, because essentially what it was is there were four clerics, some drow minions that would be easy to, the drow are scary.
Yeah.
But these were minions, so they were pretty low level. They were going to be easy enough to pick off.
Right.
But then each cleric, because they're of the Lady of the Webs, they can summon giant spiders. So I rolled a d4, and I rolled really well. So I think there were almost a dozen giant spiders crawling all over the place. And
that's a tall order.
So
what level are they?
They're level 7, so they should be able to handle it. There's 6 of them.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes level 7 brings some confidence.
Yes.
That comes with it,
So it went on and on. So we've left it now that one of the clerics ran off screaming, they're breaking into our temple.
Okay.
In the middle of the day.
Yep.
They managed to neutralize all but one drow and one cleric, who retreated into another part of the temple.
Okay.
So, and that's where we ended it.
All right. Well, so a lot going on in that one. That's going to be a good start to the next. So the DM gets to take a breath and make plans just like those clerics do.
Yes.
Well, that sounds like that's going to be a good next session. At least an exciting start to the next session.
There's some other things I'm not sure they've taken into account. So we'll see
how
they react.
Well, if you're listening, beware.
So yes, that's why I have morning voice, deep and resonant, because I'm going on not as much sleep as I would like.
People are going to get used to this professional sound, and then the next show they're going to be, oh, what happened?
Breathing helium? What's up?
So it wasn't too long ago that D&D Beyond released a 2023 kind of recap of the app. The article was titled 2023 Unrolled, a look back at a year of adventure. So if you want to go back and see that, that is on the D&D Beyond article section of the app. But I thought I'd just talk through a few of them here today. And you have not seen this list.
No.
So this is going to be new to you. They break their categories down into maps, charity, claimables, characters, names, species, classes, the mobile app, and top 5 articles. So we won't talk about all of them, but a couple of them I thought were, and more than a couple, but a few of them were kind of interesting. So we'll start with the first statistic. Now, this is under the category of maps. I'm not sure exactly how it fits, but here's the statistic. 180 million characters or NPCs were played on D&D Beyond in 2023.
Okay.
88 million monsters were fought or befriended on D&D Beyond. So I'm trying to think. Most parties are about 4 to 5 players. I guess that works out. I was thinking a lot of people make a lot of characters for the sake of making the character, and they are hardly ever played. But I guess really that's not, those statistics aren't too far apart. I just was looking at 100 more million characters than monsters, but I guess if a party of 5 is playing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
This was kind of cool. On charity, over 37,000 players contributed to charity through D&D Beyond. Oh. I think that's a cool statistic to see. I mean, I guess I wasn't aware that there was a spot for charitable contributions. So, also characters started at an average current level of 4.77.
Oh,
which is, if I remember right, there was that bell curve study a few years ago where they talked about why most characters don't make it to certain levels, and it's because I'm going to use your word because I really like it, there's a slog of time and experience points have to be captured somewhere in that like 3rd to 4th level. Like 1st and 2nd level you get really quickly, maybe even into 3rd level, and you get a lot of good cool stuff, and then it just is like, are we to 4th level yet? Are we to 4th level yet? And so I guess it's no surprise to me that the average starting point is past that slog.
Kind of an argument for milestone leveling up.
Yes. I think it definitely is. And, I've kind of moved, especially in Game Club, where we're really limited on the amount of times we can play.
Yeah.
I've kind of gone to an experience / milestone.
Yeah.
And even in our group, I've kind of gone to that too, where I still give you guys experience points. But if we complete something major, or I'm like, we've been here long enough, let's finish something and I'm just going to bump you up whether you're there or not. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, that's interesting that where people are starting their characters on average. Names, I think, is kind of fun. Most popular name is still I don't know, it just strikes me funny, is still Bob. Bob is the most popular name and apparently has been for quite some time based on this. The most growth of names is Link at a 23% increase, Seraphina at an 18% increase, and Lyra, Lyra, at a 6% increase.
The two are from, it's the Golden Compass and
his Dark Materials. Yes. Well, and I was thinking Link is from the video game.
It's a video game.
I should know what it is. I can't think of it right now. It'll come to me. And then so the most declined names, these I am not surprised. Bruno dropped by 56%. Eddie dropped by 45%. And this one, I'm not sure how to say the A. You might need to help me on this one. It's either Rando or Rondo. Rando.
I'm sure it's
Rando. Rando dropped by 39%.
There's got to be, I mean, the statistics aren't skewed precisely, but you think about what we do and we invent entirely new names. Mm-hmm. So there's millions of names out there that have one.
Right, exactly. So maybe it doesn't take much to get to like Bob being a famous.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know the difference between how many NPCs are named Bob versus how many players are named Bob.
Well, that's true.
Because when it's dropped on me that, well, what's his name? I don't know, Bob.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, this counted NPC names too.
Yeah, this is, well, it doesn't define names. It just says most popular names. So since above they're including players and NPCs, I'm guessing it's just characters created. So it's hard to tell whether it's an NPC or a character.
Oh, okay.
Species. I'm gonna have to get my reading glasses on for this one because is that a bar chart? Is that what those are called? Yeah, bar chart, bar graph. Thanks. I do have college degrees. All right, number one. Okay, so one species marks over 700,000, and that is the plain old human. That I don't know why. Again, it's got to include NPCs because I don't. I mean, when I think about just the games that we play between Game Club, the multiple games we're in, I've got probably 20 characters in my head, and I think only like 5 of them are human.
Yeah. I've created, actually, the ones I have on D&D Beyond, there's 2 Tritons, and I think there's 2 humans.
Okay.
And then like a hobgoblin and a elf. So, again, I could see where, for new players or whatever, maybe the default is human, and then the interest quickly shifts, but it shifts in all directions. So none of those other races
get a. That makes sense.
I would have guessed tiefling, to be honest.
To be number 1?
Yeah, I feel like that's like the go-to for people who are wanting to branch out.
So tiefling is number 4.
Okay.
At probably about 300,000. I would have thought that Dragonborn would be 1 or 2. Dragonborn is 3, so okay. I wasn't too far off because Dragonborn is so popular, and I'm so happy about it. You can tell. Number 2 is what I thought would be number 1, and that's elf.
Okay.
And I don't know. Yeah, that includes pure elves because half elf is number 5. So elf and half elf are 2 of the top 5.
Oh yeah.
And then we go after that. My favorite.
Like half elf is people who want to min max pick half elf.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we just tease them in game. Dwarf is number 6. Halfling, half orc. Oh, there. Okay. I couldn't get it to go sideways where I could actually read it. Genasi is number, I forgot, I lost that, after half orc. Then Gnome, Goliath, Aasimar, Aarakocra, lineages? I don't know. And custom lineages. There must be a,
okay.
There must have, I don't know. I'm sure people who use D&D Beyond know what that is. I do not currently use D&D Beyond. Okay, so then classes. Any guess as to what the top class is?
Oh, I would guess.
You're doing what I did.
Yeah, I'm overthinking.
I overthought it.
Yeah, I would either say like barbarian fighter or maybe like sorcerer.
Straight up fighter.
Fighter.
Yep. The one that I thought would be number 1 is number 2, rogue. Who doesn't love to play a good rogue?
Okay.
Because rogues are so versatile. You can have a rogue that fights. You can have a rogue that sneaks around. You can have rogues that do all ranged and all sorts of different things. Barbarian is next, so you weren't too far off with the fighter. Barbarian, wizard, paladin, warlock, cleric, ranger, bard. Here's mine, druid, sorcerer. My other one, monk, and then artificer.
Okay.
And just to give you some context. Fighter is over 300,000. Well, the 3 over 300,000 is fighter, rogue, barbarian. Then there's a huge drop. Then it goes kind of slowly down to monk is over 100,000. Then there's a big drop to artificer at probably about 75,000.
Okay.
So, all right. So that's that. Mobile app searches. The top words searched are druid and dragon. How random.
Yeah.
And the name of the game, by the way, is not Druids and Dragons. It's Dungeons and Dragons. 7 million spells were cast on the app. 1.9 million players rolled dice for 140 million rolls. 6 million new characters are created, and character sheets opened 80 million times. Here are the top 5 articles, which I thought were kind of interesting. Druid 101. Druid is not very high on that list of like most popular classes.
Maybe they research it and decide, no.
Yeah, it's way down. You know, I think it is the D&D movie.
Okay.
I bet these searches happened really early in the year when we were trying to learn about Doric, and there's that whole thing about a druid can't shape change like that.
Yeah.
I bet that's where a lot of this came from. How to create your first Dungeons and Dragons character with D&D Beyond is number 2. Number 3, D&D Virtual Tabletop, a closer look. Number 3, what is Dungeons and Dragons? You know what's cool about that is people are looking.
Yeah.
People are looking. And embracing your wild side, playing as a, struggle with this word, lycanthrope. Is that it? Lycanthrope in D&D.
Cool.
Again, I think heavily influenced by shape changing and things like that. Can I tell you, just real, this is off the side. I didn't tell you I was going to talk about this. I have a student, we have a student in our school who's on our competitive speech team. And she wrote an article about Dungeons and Dragons. She wrote a speech about Dungeons and Dragons. And it is about mental health of Gen Z, and how Dungeons and Dragons could be a possible solution for helping people cope with mental illness, loneliness, autism, all that kind of thing. And what made me think of this is what is Dungeons and Dragons? Because she talks about that in her speech. And the response and reaction from judges and competitors alike is just overwhelming. They are loving. I mean, she's a talented child. But the people who are writing critiques, one guy this last week wrote, "I'm not even a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm sold. I like if that is what it does for people, I'm in. I'm looking into it." And so it was just really cool. And so when I saw that, I just had to mention that. Cool. But she's doing very well. Doing very well. All right. Well, this is that weird 5th week of a month. And on our schedule for Teachers in the Dungeon, we determined that the 5th week of the month was going to be a top 5 day. So our first top 5, I think both of us kind of struggled with this. We tweaked.
You did too. You came up with it.
We tweaked I had something in my mind, and then you questioned it, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, wait a minute," and so then this is what I finalized. So I hope your list matches, and if it doesn't, it wouldn't be the first time it does.
Right.
We're normally on the same page.
You got me worried a little bit here. I think I got the final version.
I haven't changed it since the last time we talked. I just kind of reworded it. So it's top 5 fictional characters who best represent a D&D class.
Okay.
And when we talk about fictional characters, I went with movies.
Okay.
Did you, or did you go? Okay, so you went around. Some of mine are in books too. So they're books to movies, things like that. But this could be any fictional character of any genre of film or book, but they show characteristics of D&D classes.
Yeah, this on the surface, easy peasy. But when I really started looking into it, first of all, I don't go to that many movies anymore. So I was struggling with things that I was even familiar with. And then I kept just being pulled back to Lord of the Rings. I'm like, no, those are kind of how
So
the
many
classes.
times. Yep.
So I wasn't use that. And I was just drawing a blank. And honestly, I was just going to go for the low-hanging fruit and just go to Marvel. And then this morning, about 45 minutes before you got here, actually, I thought, wait, let me just do a search for top literary characters of all time.
Oh, yeah.
So I found some in that list that were kind of fun. So I've gone highbrow.
Very nice. So similarly, I intentionally avoided, like you said, the low hanging fruit. I intentionally avoided Marvel characters. We could give classes. I mean, that might be a fun thing to do some point. Is talk about Marvel superheroes and what classes they represent. And I also avoided most. I don't think I have any like what we think of as fantasy movies in the realm of like Lord of the Rings or Dungeons and Dragons or something like that. You know, swords and sorcery, that kind of stuff I left out. And so none of the films that I chose characters from are from this century, and maybe even have to go beyond the last decade of the last century.
Okay.
So classic is, I think classic is well popular. I think everyone will know these, most of them. But, and I have 6. So do you mind if I go first?
Yes.
You do mind?
No, you can go. You can go first, and you get the last word. So yeah,
all right.
Your idea, so that'll be fine.
Okay, so the first one I chose is when I see this character and I watch this character on screen, it doesn't strike me as this class, but the more I think about it, I'm kind of like, okay, he does this, he's a good tracker, he's got a good shot, he can fist fight. Okay. And so I really felt like the man with no name from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, played by Clint Eastwood, would be a perfect ranger.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah, I think just he's got a dead eye with his gun, but doesn't mind getting into fisticuffs and running into action. You know, just like a ranger would. A ranger would prefer to shoot from distance most of the time, and but he can track. You know, he gets down on the ground and looks for horse trails and whatnot. And so I thought he's kind of a gritty, tough, old ranger type character.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of what he plays too. That makes sense.
Like and I never realized he didn't have a name. He is listed as the man with no name.
Oh, nice.
So I don't know if he's good, bad, or ugly, but he has no name.
All of them at once. Okay, well, I went with totally obvious.
Okay.
My first literary character is Victor Frankenstein.
Nice.
So, of course, naturally falls into Death Domain Cleric. So, again, I don't have too much to say of it other than I think mine are going to be stretches, some of them.
Okay.
But that one, I found a quote from him. So, a new species would bless me as its creator and source. Many happy and excellent natures would owe their being to me. No father could claim the gratitude of his child so completely as I should deserve theirs.
Nice.
So I usually think of clerics as being benevolent, but they wouldn't have to be.
No. Oh, clerics can be really nasty.
And so that's, a very self-important, self-aggrandizing Death Domain Cleric.
Victor Frankenstein.
Victor
Frankenstein. All right. Perfect. I love it. My next one, I was like, okay, there's got to be someone from this film. One of my favorite films as a kid. And I did not choose the main character. I did not choose my favorite character that wasn't a main character. So I went with my third favorite character because this dude's tough. And this dude would be in his prime. So in the movie, he is not in his prime, but he shows the characteristics of what he used to be. And I think he'd be a perfect fighter. And the guy I'm talking about is Jim Malone from The Untouchables, played by Sean Connery.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He has a famous line. I meant to look it up before I came. It's when he's in his own house and they break in and they're gonna take him out. And the guy has a knife, and Connery goes, I don't know, he says some comment about the guy's heritage and says, you bring a knife to a gunfight, and he draws his gun. And the guy's like, oh, and he runs down this long hallway. And Jim Malone follows him out onto the fire escape stairwell, and there's a guy with a Tommy gun on the house across the way and just blows him away. But like a true fighter, does not, die right away. He manages to crawl his way to where he can, let someone know that something has happened. But he's just like the Clint Eastwood character. He's a gritty, tough old dog. I can see him getting into a lot of bar fights for the sake of law. He'd definitely be a chaotic good because, police in Chicago in the 1920s and 19 teens and 1920s, they knew what the law was. They knew how to keep the peace, but I'm sure they didn't always follow the law in order to do that.
Right.
And as Elliot Ness showed, and Elliot Ness would probably be on the edge of lawful good. I'm not sure where he fits though as a class, but because he did everything to make sure he followed the law to capture Al Capone. But Jim Malone, he taught him a few things along the way. And so I thought if I had and these another thing I thought when I was putting this together, I thought, would I want these characters in a campaign with me?
Oh, okay.
Like if I were adventuring, I would definitely want the Man with No Name. I would definitely want Jim Malone with me, and I'd feel like someone always had my back. So, there you go.
My second one, I'll tell the class first, Rogue. That one I found was the easiest to match to sort of non-fantasy characters.
Yeah, I would agree.
You can do Harrison Ford, either Han Solo or Indiana Jones. Lots of those. But for classical literature, I went with Huck Finn.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's processing. I love it. As a rogue, yeah.
Because I just thought of scenes where he'll slip in. He's always trying to slip through the cracks of society, basically.
Yep.
And get what he wants. So the quote from him, again, these quotes don't necessarily illustrate the class, but they do illustrate the character.
The character. Mm-hmm.
So what I found was, Jim said that bees won't sting idiots, but I didn't believe that because I tried them lots of times myself and they wouldn't sting me. And I found this in an article, and they use this as an example of Huck's humility. And I was like, I'm not sure about that. I think
there needs to be more context to that. Because I'm not pulling that out either.
No.
So no, I love that. I'm trying to think of. I used to teach Huck Finn, and there are lots of places where he has to sneak in. He even uses a disguise.
Remember
he uses his quote disguise kit to turn it. Yep. And I'm trying to think of other examples, but yeah, that's a great. I love that one. That's cool. That's cool. So you got Victor Von Frankenstein and Huck Finn.
Yep.
Because now I'm putting together your campaign in my head. All right, my next one. I wrote down a class. It wasn't really a class, so you might have to help me define this one. But I chose a fictional character who, I don't know, I'm going to say he raises the dead. And he speaks to some sort of this might answer the question of what class, because it just came to me. He speaks to some sort of a Patreon in his head, I don't know. He goes on an adventure and meets mystical dead characters. The person I'm talking about is, and it's a better book than movie. I'm just going to put this out here. As the librarian, of course I would say that, but this is true in this case. I'm talking about Ray Kinsella from the book Shoeless Joe Goes to Iowa, or better known as The Field of Dreams.
Oh,
he raises the dead.
Okay.
He listens to a Patreon who tells him to do something.
Nice.
He builds a field, and the dead come. He also takes a trip to Boston to meet with a dead baseball player who never got a statistic in his playing career, but was at bat. And so he goes there. I forget, Moonlight Graham or Moonshine Graham or something like that. And so it just struck me as...
That's a very fitting choice for you.
It's a little odd, and it's a little stretch. Like you said, it's
Books
a little
and
bit
baseball,
stretch.
your two favorites.
That's right. Books, baseball, and D&D classes of Warlock.
It's got it all.
And so Ray Kinsella, as a Warlock, raises the dead in a baseball field that he was told to build by his patron.
Okay. My next one, a little bit of a stretch, and I struggled on where to put this character, but this is a character who appears very passive, dispenses wisdom.
Okay.
but when push comes to shove, is very calculating and even merciless in doing what needs to be done.
Passive and calculating and merciless.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's merciless might be a bit strong, but as far as knowing what needs to be done and doing it.
Okay.
Atticus Finch.
Nice. Yes.
So
100%.
I thought.
What class did you say, or have you?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
So I thought, all told, put those things together, and this is where it's a little bit off kilter, but I think those ideas match a monk.
Most definitely.
High wisdom.
Yep.
And his Dex, you don't really see that, but when he guns down the rabid dog, the skill that's just there when he needs it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that would fit. And again, sort of teaching Scout and Jem. So the quote I have is, I wanted you to see what real courage is, instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do.
Nice. I love that. Kind of like my Sean Connery character, where maybe an adventuring monk one time in his day,
yes,
but now has kind of landed, found his place, continues to practice his skill, but doesn't go far from home anymore, and ends up teaching.
It's like a Durnan or something like that.
Yes. I love it. That's a great choice. I love it. I really love your list, and I really love that you bring out a quote from each one. That's cool. That's cool. My next one, we're going to take a step back in time on this character. Only showed up in movies, I believe. One of my favorite movies of all time, however. And this one, I take inspiration from the way in which you play, and here's the class, the way you play Nikistos, your bard. Because Nikistos uses the skill of language, using the spell of the sharp tongue.
He's got there's cutting words and there's vicious mockery, and then silver tongue.
Yes. Okay. So that took me out. That is what I'm drawing off of. Not so much the musical side of a bard. This is a bard that uses language to get what he needs or wants, or to influence people around him. The character I'm talking about is from a movie from the 1960s, and the character's name is Lucas Jackson, played by Paul Newman, and the movie's name is Cool Hand Luke.
I've never seen that before.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is going to be like that Tim Allen movie you made me watch, which I enjoyed, by the way. This movie is so Lucas Jackson. He lives in a small little town. He's got issues. He's put into jail into a work camp. One of those work camps that's out like in the middle of nowhere, and they cut weeds along the ditches, chain gang kind of stuff. And he's put into that prison, and he's got he's a nobody among all these prisoners who know everything, who know all the things. There's a top dog guy, and Dragline is his name, and others. And when you think about, when I think about a D&D campaign, you could make a D&D campaign out of all of the characters in this camp.
Oh, cool.
But Lucas Jackson walks in, and he just uses words and quiet actions to become top dog of the camp.
Okay.
And at one point, I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to try it anyway. They're playing cards. And Dragline is, he's a big dude, but he's winning the money and all this kind of stuff. And Lucas Jackson sits down, mind if I get in? They're like, yeah, new boy, get in here, that kind of thing. And so he's playing, and it's down to two of them, and he's like, raising the ante, and they're getting the whole crowd, the tension is rising, and finally Dragline throws down his hand. He's got a pretty good hand to win the deck. Or no, he folds. I'm sorry, he folds, shows his cards. He's got a decent hand. Lucas Jackson wins, throws down his cards. He's got nothing. And they're like, well, how did you do it? And he goes, sometimes nothing can be a pretty cool hand. gaining the loyalty of everybody else. And he does other things like that, where he goes up against unmeasurable odds. The Atticus Finch quote, kind of starting when you know you're licked from the beginning, but you begin anyway. That's how this bard, Lucas Jackson, would go. It's great. It's such a great movie and character, but I definitely think he would be a swell bard.
Okay, that segues nicely to my next one. So the next one, again, is a little bit of a stretch, but I went with Jay Gatsby.
Sweet. I love it.
So I thought about how he creates something out of nothing, essentially, and uses artifice to just make people believe what he wants them to. And so I thought Bard as well.
Yep.
That, again, not necessarily music, but using his words and just making people believe kind of what they want to believe. So the quote I came across didn't really, it kind of pertains, but then came the war, old sport. It was a great relief, and I tried very hard to die, but I seemed to bear an enchanted life.
Yep. Chapter 1. It's a great book.
So that one just seemed, I don't have much more to say other than that, but I thought, that does fit the way a bard would behave.
I think it's interesting. We both chose characters for our bards that come from nothing.
Yeah.
And they use their skill. They use that proficiency bonus of persuasion or
deception
to make something of themselves. That's cool. I love it. All right. My next one. This is a stretch, but at the same time, in my mind, it is not a stretch at all, because I'm going to talk about a fighter next. And sometimes a great fighter doesn't necessarily have to be a great fighter. They just have to have the passion. They have to have the desire. They have to have the will to win. And so my fighter that I chose here doesn't have any of it, but wants to be a fighter so bad. And he overcomes everybody saying, no, you can't do it. You're going to be awful. You're never going to make it. Just stay at your own station. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I've got an idea. I don't know the character's name, but I'll see if I'm right.
But he does it anyway. And he goes through all the hurdles, and he takes the grief, and he takes the pushes, and he takes the punches. And the character's name is the namesake of the movie I'm talking about, and that is Rudy.
Yep.
Played by Sean Astin.
Yes.
I would not want any less of a fighter than that. Yeah. Someone that when the party is in trouble is going to charge up to the front, and whether they're going to win or not, they're at least keeping the foe at bay so that everybody else can do their job.
I think I kind of did that with Samwise Gamgee a little bit too.
He did very much so. That's true. But again, it's a great sports movie. I love that, but when I think about my party, that's what I want in a fighter. I mean, of course, I hope that they're more proficient to be, so they can last a little while up there, and I'm not constantly casting, spare the dying or whatever. But that's the mentality that I would want in a fighter. I'm going in it against all odds. Again, I go to your Atticus Finch. Yeah. I mean, Atticus Finch would be a great bard. You are absolutely right that he could drop that line to somebody when you're going into a battle that you're just not sure you're going to win.
Oh, yeah. He could have been a bard, too.
That's right. What did you... Monk. Oh, you said monk.
But bard would fit.
A bard would fit him for sure. But what was your bard was...
Gatsby. Yep. Fooling everybody.
Yes. Okay. Anyway, Sean Astin, Rudy, his portrayal of Rudy and the story of Rudy would fit a fighter really well for me.
All right, this last one, the more I think about it, the more interesting I think it would be to see it actually play out in a campaign.
Okay.
So this last one is a sorcerer.
All right.
So this is a character who has wild magic.
Okay.
Within the confines of the literature, the book itself. This person seems to be able to conjure control of people and situations out of nothing by sheer force of will. And yet, at key times, it goes totally haywire and gets beyond this character's control in interacting with the characters around.
Okay.
So this is a woman character, probably one of the most famous. This one is screen and book.
Okay.
And this one goes all the way back to 1939.
Okay. I think I know who you're talking about.
So this character that I think would be a wild magic sorcerer is Scarlett O'Hara.
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going. Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Because she, again, in the book, she's described as not beautiful.
Okay.
But
in the film,
very much
a little
so,
different.
yes. But in the film, they capture the notion that she can manipulate any situation and get whatever she wants all the time.
Yeah.
And again, within that, I mean, that could be like a bard or something like that.
Sure.
But I felt it was more like, how does she do that? Like it's there's a magic to it that I thought was like more like a sorcerer. And then of course, when she meets Rhett Butler, all of those things go off the rails. She can't control what she's unleashed, but he doesn't escape unscathed. He is very much in her thrall, but too independent. And it just, so the quote doesn't really have anything to do with sorcery, but I just thought this was a cool one because this isn't in the movie, but it is in the book.
Okay.
I'm tired of everlastingly being unnatural and never doing anything I want to do. I'm tired of acting like I don't eat more than a bird and walking when I want to run and saying I feel faint after a waltz when I could dance for 2 more days and never get tired. I'm tired of saying how wonderful you are to fool men who haven't got 1/2 the sense I've got. And I'm tired of pretending I don't know anything so men can tell me things and feel important while they're doing it. But again, that could translate into the spells that she would weave.
Yes, very much so. Cool.
Scarlett O'Hara, sorceress.
You know, I know the character. I know the general setting, but I've never read the book or seen the movie.
Oh.
I can't. Like, it's one of those that always sits on a list of like, I wouldn't mind seeing that sometime.
You really should. That character is so singular because I don't know if you would call her an anti-hero or what, because she's not good. But the character arc is so good in the movie because she goes from being absolutely self-willed and spiteful and selfish to the end. She is hard as nails, very powerful, not good, but she has an absolute dedication to protecting her family, her land. And so she begins to behave in ways that if other people were to do it would be noble. With her, it's not quite that, but she's so fascinating and so powerful that you have to root for her the whole time.
Sounds like an anti-hero for sure. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I cheated and I had 6. So I began and I will end.
Yes.
And then I have a couple questions for you afterwards. A couple things that I struggled with in this list. So the one, my number 1 is the one I shared with you the other day when we were kind of talking about, so what is this list? How's this going to look? So mine is a guy who tinkers, is always making things, is always creating things, and creates the most amazing, most pop culture iconic invention in our real world today, but his fictional inventions are what people remember about him. And so I thought this character personified exactly what an artificer is and what an artificer does. And I even see his personality as being very artificer-like. That wouldn't necessarily always have to be the case, but just in my mind, that's how it works. Who I'm talking about is Doc Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd from Back to the Future.
Right.
He's when Marty goes in the very first movie, he goes in and while the credits are still rolling, goes into Doc Brown's shed. All of those like silly inventions with the clock, and he gets the guitar with the giant amplifier behind him and blows the play. Just all of that. And then of course the ultimate is the time machine DeLorean.
Right.
Which
I bet you anything that was in the minds of whoever created the artificer class.
If it wasn't, then I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, there are lots of characters in the world that in literature that create, but none that sits in my mind more than Doc Brown. And Doc Brown's sort of like flightiness and like no awareness to like really socially what's going on around him.
Right.
I see that as a character as well. I mean, Bolei was kind of like that.
Yes.
Just sort of went about his business, creating spiders during little spider cannons during battles and did what he wanted. And I love that. I love that picture. And I think there's a lot of art out there that shows sort of the carefree, silly feeling artificer because they put more attention into what they build than what's really around them. You know, their friendships are with the tools and the things they build. So anyway, Doc Brown I thought was the perfect artificer.
Nice.
So question so here was a group of people that I was like, I just couldn't come up with a class for them. And so I want to say them because hopefully you'll be able to help me. And if you can't, we can have our listeners give some feedback on it. So I saw this image and I was like, oh, all three of these guys, somehow they've got to be D&D classes. The three guys I'm talking about, I think there are four, but there are only three in the picture, is the Ghostbusters.
Oh.
Vecman, I can't remember their names now. But
that is a movie I have not seen either.
You've never seen the Ghostbusters? Okay, well, so there's but someone tinkers and builds the things that.
So you got to have an artificer in there.
And so one of them has to be a cleric because you're dealing with undead and ghosts.
Although a warlock could do that too.
That might fit better actually. And one of them is sort of just go in and get it done. That's the Bill Murray character. Can we just get this over? Is sort of the doubter, but is there anyway. So I kind of see maybe he's a fighter. I don't know. I guess let us know what you think.
Or if he's not careful about it, he's a barbarian. If he's careful with plans, then he's a fighter.
And he's a ladies' man, or at least he thinks he is. So maybe he is a barbarian. Yeah. So I would be curious what people think about the Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah,
and
that'd be cool.
What classes that the Ghostbusters fit in there. There's another question I was going to ask you about this. Oh, yes, it's this. Now, you did have one that fits this category. I struggled. I really struggled, and I feel bad that I struggled about it, and so I'm trying to figure out why. I could not think of a single female character that fit a D&D class, which is that a problem with our literature and films, or is that a problem with me? You chose Scarlett O'Hara.
Well, my expanded list.
Yeah, who else do you have?
I think. See, I'm kind of a sucker for Jane Austen and even some Bronte stuff.
Yeah,
Jane Austen is a little bit of a stretch. I was trying to figure out Elizabeth Bennet or Emma Woodhouse, and the best I could come for Emma Woodhouse is maybe she has high intelligence, low wisdom.
Okay,
so that could be like a wizard.
Yep.
Where she tries to make things happen in her little community through observation and dropping a word here and there.
Okay.
Elizabeth Bennet was tougher. She has high intelligence, high wisdom, high charisma. Okay. So I won't know where to put her in D&D. Maybe sort of a bard or maybe sort of a sorcerer. Actually, sorcerer would probably fit because Darcy falls for her and doesn't know how. And she doesn't either, really. She's not trying. Mm-hmm. So that could be that. And then Jane Eyre would be, I would say, like a warlock. There's something kind of otherworldly.
Yeah, that's the one I'm familiar with that you're talking about. But yeah, I think that would fit her. I like all sorts of animation. I thought of lots of female characters, Elsa is the sorceress who uses ice and snow and weather. Mm-hmm. Merida from Brave is the ranger and rides horses and shoots bows and arrows and things like that.
When I was trying to do a movie list and ran short, the golden pick I had was Ellen Ripley from Aliens.
Yes,
fighter.
Okay, yep, you're right. You're right. And then who's the I can't remember her name now, but in Terminator.
Oh, Linda Hamilton is
Hamilton.
Yeah, she'd be a fighter.
Yeah, she
plans very carefully and they're there.
And I thought of the Terminator as a Warforged as well.
Okay.
That would have Schwarzenegger's Terminator as a Warforged. The liquid one, I don't know that's not a war. That's a magical creation.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was just curious if you had any troubles with that as well, but I think those are some good ones that we just mentioned that I just sort of I saw them and I just kind of passed on them, so it's clearly me.
Well, no, some of them do take a little more time to fit in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of it is, D&D, like it or not, is heavy combat, and there just are fewer female characters in combat-heavy pieces of literature and movies.
Right. I would have to go to D&D literature to find some really awesome, clear fighters.
Or Marvel.
Yeah, or Marvel. Indeed. Okay. Well, we'd be curious to hear what famous or what literary or film characters you think would fit would idealize classes in Dungeons and Dragons. So reach out to us. Give us a description. Send us an email, teachersinthedungeon@gmail.com. But we're on Facebook and Instagram at Teachers in the Dungeon, and we're on X with at Dungeon Teachers. We also have a YouTube channel that we're placing our shows upon.
Yes.
One day in the near or far future, we'll put some original content on that as well.
Yes.
But we'd be curious to hear what you say about that. And also, what are your reactions to the D&D Beyond statistics from 2023? Am I crazy to think that Bob is still the number one name? Or is it because I don't know what his name is? Bob. We're just going to go Bob.
Right.
Is it that kind of a thing? So any final thoughts on today's show?
I don't think so. This was, like I said, you threw me a curveball, and I was coming in thinking I might just have to say I'll be the audience. But once I got into just Google's my friend, once I got a list of the 101 most famous literary characters or whatever, I didn't know a lot of them, but out of 100, I knew enough.
Right. All right. Well, so this wraps up our first month of 2024.
Yes.
And so next week, our show, next week, someone takes over the podcast.
Right.
It is a podcast takeover next week.
Yes.
From a couple
goblins did it.
Right.
They yanked the mics out of our hands, and you'll get to see the result.
That's right. So, and also, if you like this top 5, we have several top 5s in our catalog of shows. Go back and check out some of them, and see if there's anything that you might enjoy in our top 5s. So, with that said, for Dan Ream, I'm Tom Gross. This is Teachers in the Dungeon. Until next week, keep rolling those 20s.